So a lot of people have been emailing me about these deformers in Modo and what you can do with them. There's a lot of great info out there already, but hopefully I can simplify it a little bit and use our snake as an example. Let's just start with a little bit of a primer just to see what can happen here. I'm going to jump over to the Animate tab. And in here you can see that we've got a lot of new controls and tools since 501. We have our setup, our modifiers, our inverse kinematics, which we'll talk about, and then our deformers. Now, recoil for dynamics is built in to Modo 601. It was an extra plugin in 501, but now it includes soft bodies for making soft, smooth objects. But what we're going to do is come back here to deformers right now, and there's a number of different tools, and they're not super complicated once you kind of get the hang of them. And it took me a little while just to get used to them and kind of know the process. And once you do, you have a lot of creative freedom. So hopefully in this course I can introduce you to them, and rather than giving you topic specific, click this, do this, it can do this, I want you to understand them a little bit more. So what I'll do is open up the model tab and simply let's just add a cylinder. I'll hit the tab key so it is a subdivided object, and we can just work with this, just really simple, just to get you working with these. Over on the right you can see we've got our items tab, our shader tab, our groups, and a deformers tab. Pull out, you can see it says deformers. Okay, you'll see that in the animate tab. When you come over here to Modo, to the the model tab, you're not going to see that. So it's in the animate tab, and then we get to all of our controls here. So really simple, a deformer deforms an object. It lets you modify the shape over time in various ways. They're independent of the mesh, and it affects multiple meshes. All right, so what does that mean? Well, simply, let's just add a bend deformer. Now, I've got items chosen up here. I'm working with items. My item is selected, in this case a cylinder, and let's just delete this blank mesh just to be safe, so we're not confused. Okay, and I'll jump back over to the deformers tab so you can see what's happening. So items, let's just add a bend. Okay, and a little tiny dotted line is added. What does that allow me to do? Well, it deforms the object. It lets me bend the object. Now, for years, we've had to put a bone structure into objects in other programs in order to make them deform, because morphs are linear. Morphs are X, Y, and Z, and like I opened the snake mouth, it just went up and down. It really wasn't anything. But if you want to bend something, you really, truly needed a deformation system, and the deformers are one way of doing that, as well as bones, or in this case, joints, in Modo, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. I think the next chapter. It's coming up. So it defaults to that 0, 0 axis, and you can see it right there, the center of the grid. Let's go ahead and just move it down. So press my W command, grab the handle, and we'll move it down to the base. And then I want this end of the bend effector to come all the way up. So we're just going to change the length right here. Okay, so notice that a bend is now added. This bend effector is now added to my deformers tab, and then the properties with that selected are right here. Okay, so that's pretty easy. Working with these is not complex. It's just you have to think about it and do it one step at a time. Because what I was doing in the beginning was just adding this and clicking and pulling, and I know a lot of you have done the same, and it doesn't work. I can't see what's going on. But we had an object, we selected it, we added a bend deformer. You can also right click and say add deformer. Go to influence or effectors, and there's our bend effector. It adds automatically to the deformers tab. We select it, make sure we select it, and then when we change the angle, we're bending the object. That's it. Very, very simple. That is how they work on a very simple level. Now, you can stack these up. You can add fall-offs to them. You can do so many different things. It's just kind of mind-boggling what's going to happen. In the last few weeks since Modo's been out, I've just seen so many different variations of this, and I don't even think we've scratched the surface yet, because everybody's pretty much just playing with these, and I think when the right project comes up, you'll actually find a good, useful techniques for these, whether it's medical animations or scientific animations or even just character animations. All right, so let's see what else we can do. Now you can add multiples. So here's a magnet deformer. And let me just undo that real quick. Make sure the item is selected first, and then we'll add the magnet. There we go. And they'll go back to our deformers, and you can see that that's added. So that's kind of the trick. You know, a lot of times I'll go and add things and then realize, oh, I needed to apply it to that cylinder. But with that magnet deformer, now, again, if I just press the transform, now we're just playing with the magnet deformer, but we can also bend it. So if we come back here, and let me just rotate around a little bit, click right on my bend. Now we're bending with the magnet. Now you can see it changes a little bit, and that's because of the order of this. All right, so you can actually change the order of these, and now the magnet is happening and then the bend. And that way it doesn't bend awkward, doesn't bend off. So let me go back here to our magnet. I'll just click on that locator for it, and you can see here's the range, and I can change that shape. I've used these just simply in the last couple of weeks and during the beta days just to deform an object, just to leave it that way. Rather than simply modeling something, it's sometimes easier just to do this. So you don't always have to animate these values. But as I showed you a few videos ago, anywhere you see these little dots means you can animate those values. So I can take this range, let's say from 0, and then take the bend also, click on that to select it at 0. Here's our timeline. We're in the Animate tab. Let's just click on the angle, and then let's go up maybe just 2 seconds, and let's increase the bend about like that, not quite 90 degrees. Then let's go to the magnet at 0, and let's make sure our magnet is selected, magnet effector. Hit the range at 0, and then we'll also go up to 60, and then we'll increase. Not that much, just about right there. And so now if I rewind, hit play, we've just animated 2 effectors very easily. Okay, so I've always said to people when we're working in 3D, it is overwhelming, all the things you can do, all the tools, and of course software developers just keep adding more and more and more. But with Modo, I think it's actually a little bit easier to understand, because if you put one thing in at a time, get to know it, work with the values, then add another one, you can simply just layer it up and start adding things together. So just kind of keep that process. Don't get overwhelmed. All right, so just a simple overview of these effectors. Now, it can obviously do a lot more. We can start working with fall-offs. I also can normalize this, and we could put a little folder here called a normalizing folder. And depending on what we do, especially when we use fall-offs, if we blend them together, what a normalizing folder does, and probably some of your examples you've pulled up actually show that, the normalizing folder, it takes the effects when they're combined, and then it basically normalizes them. So basically they're balanced and uniform. So that's all that is. Don't overthink that either. But if you've got one effect that's kind of working and you see it playing against another, you can add a normalizing folder and it just blends them together very nicely. So let's go on to the next video, and I'll show you how the spline effectors work.